Hey guys, we're back. Another episode, season 3, Talk About It. Today we're going to be joined by Jake Dempsey of JobNimbus, and we're going to talk processes.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back, season 3, Talk About It. We are on episode 3, and today we're joined by my good friend Jake Dempsey with JobNimbus. Jake, thanks so much for jumping on with us.
Man, it's exciting to be here. I feel like these are my only links to the outside world, but it's awesome to see people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this season we're doing advice that you would give contractors. So we sent out a submission form. We've got your advice. It's great advice. Before we dive into that, just tell everyone a little bit about who Jake Dempsey is and what JobNimbus is, and then we'll get into the advice.
So who Jake Dempsey is, I am the evangelist for JobNimbus. That's my role. What that means is I just talk to people about, how to run their company better, how to improve their business through technology, some of the cultural changes that need to happen within a company. And it's something I'm pretty passionate about. I've been in the construction industry since I was a teenager. So off and on doing different things. I've been in technology off and on doing different things that have taken me all the way from Taiwan and China to Eagleview, where I spent a lot of time. So I've been in the industry for a long time. I know a lot of the people, the ins and outs, and I understand what it takes to succeed as a contractor because I've been one, and what things that a lot of common traps that people fall into that cause them to fail or struggle, because I've done those as well. So so that's where I come from. JobNimbus is one of the largest industry softwares that provides CRM, project management services for contractors, people that are looking to improve their processes, people that are looking to pick up the dimes and nickels and sometimes bigger bills that they're leaving on the sidewalk. And so, that's what we're here for, is to turn roofing contractors into heroes.
Perfect. And not just roofing contractors, right? JobNimbus is good for anybody that's doing any sort of contracting.
We are, and we have a pretty large base, and it's pretty varied. Our focus is certainly on roofing, just because that's where we've started. That's where we really bring, we pull in most of our information to make our processes the best. But no, absolutely, we've got pool guys, we've got painters, fence guys, you name it. We run the gambit, and we're happy to help and support any of the trades that need a really simple system to get in and organize their work and add to their bottom line.
Absolutely. And so I know we're going to have people from other verticals. The advice that you shared, I was shocked when I got the submission in, Jake. I have to admit, I know you pretty well, and I never would have guessed in a million years that your advice would have been centered around systems and repeatable processes. But since that was the advice that you came with, I said, well, let's bring Jake on and let's talk about this. I'm being extremely sarcastic, but I know you're very passionate about creating systems and repeatable processes. So passionate that I actually added an extra taco to the plate today, so I've got 6. We're going to donate $360 when I eat all of these to charity. But tell us a little bit about high level, why systems and repeatable processes are so important, and then we can kind of dive into some specifics.
Well, so business is a science, and I think people kind of get used to shooting from the hip. A lot of people are innately good at interacting with people, and so they feel like that's enough. That they feel like that's something that they can build a company off of, and that's great. That's a great start. But since business is a science, we know that scientific theory basically means if you do A, B, and C, it will equal D to some a predictable result, right? So that's where we look at systems and processes being essential, so that you get that A, B, and C to equal D. If that's not something you're examining and you're tracking, then what you're doing is you're just existing, right? You're getting enough money off of one job to keep your company floating to the next job, and not being able to dive into the details of that, figuring out, well, how can I improve that process and how can I document that improvement so that when I bring somebody else on, they're doing the same thing and getting the same results. That's where a lot of people struggle. That's where a lot of businesses, as they're trying to grow, really have a hard time. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about that subject.
Yeah, so I want to go into the repeatable and the documentation of the process. So often I work with roofing contractors, and it's oftentimes owners or just contractors in general. It's owners, and I talk to them about, company came in my case, and I say, if I sent one of your guys out to a job and I said, tell me exactly what you need to do from a documentation of the job, how many of them would know it? And the owners all want to say yes. Every one of my guys would know it. And I say, well, would you be willing to wager, $100 that they get it to match what you say it should be? And they always say, nah, I'm not that confident in it. How important is it in your eyes when you do create these systems and processes that not only are they documented for somebody to see them, but that you really invest time to train to those systems and processes?
Well, so it's essential, and here's why, right? If you've ever had the experience, and people watching can kind of do some self-examination, where they either felt they were or had someone in their business that was the Michael Jordan, right? Nobody can touch them. They're amazing, and ultimately everything hangs on this one person, right? Well, if you can't get more Michael Jordans, then you're held hostage by this one person that refuses to give up. So ultimately, think about this: if you got one guy that's at 90% and a bunch of guys that are at 60%, what would it do for your business to get rid of the guy that was at 90% because he's not willing to share, make an effort to show some of the things he's doing to other people in the company to bring them all up? But what if you could get rid of him and then focus on those guys that are down here and bring them all up to that level? It can be demoralizing. It can be frustrating. It can cause problems in a company. If there's only one person with the magic sauce, they're holding you hostage. They get to decide what they're doing. They get to dictate what's happening in your company. And all too many times I see people that, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm afraid I'm going to lose this sales guy, or I'm going to lose this. You know what? If you have a process in place and you document it, number one, when something goes wrong, you don't go, my hair's on fire. I'm tired of this. Stop everything. We're going to reinvent everything. When you have a system and a process, you can start to see where the breakdown is. I give an example. When we travel a lot, we've been to the highway to hail things together. I grew up very poor. I grew up in a very, very not privileged household as far as money went. And so my first time selling, they snatched me up at my first sales job. You got a great personality. You interact with the customers. They love you. And then I started going through the process and I got stuck. And then where I got stuck was asking for the sale. Right. So instead of looking at me and going, Jake, you're just not performing, you're out. Somebody did some documentation, said, okay, you're talking to the customer on time. You're doing the estimating correctly. You're presenting a quote, but then I'm not seeing the next step is falling apart. What's going on? Well, the truth is I grew up so poor that handing somebody an invoice for $50,000 was terrifying for me. I didn't think that people had $50,000 to give you, and it only took a couple of times where people are like, "Yeah, here's a check for 50 grand. Go for it. Let's make this happen." When I'm like, "Oh my gosh, people have this kind of money? My dad doesn't make this kind of money in his lifetime. How do you have that in your bank?" Once I figured that out, and they coached me through that, I was a machine. I went from one of the largest electrical distributors in the United States. I went from customer service rep to sales one faster than anybody in the history of the company. And that's not bragging. That's just saying that they had a process. And once they figured out where my process was broken down, there was no stopping me. And so that's where systems and processes help. If you have a problem in your production, you don't have to fire everybody in production and start over again. You figure out where the problem is. Maybe it's a supply issue. Maybe it's a crew issue. Maybe you just need to hire some more people. And so that's where systems and processes tell us a lot. And looking at those numbers and examining them, let us make little tiny adjustments and improve things instead of going bonkers and upsetting the apple cart every time and reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, no, I love that story. And like you said, I've heard the story before, but I think it's so important to not only be able to say, hey, we have systems, we have processes in place, but we're willing to invest time from the high level to say, where are we deficient in these systems and processes, or where is that bottleneck? And then coaching and training your team so that they can get through the bottleneck, as opposed to just saying, well, Jake, you're not closing enough deals, see you later. It's, let's look at what Jake's doing. He's doing this, and this really well, but that's where the bottleneck is. What can we do to help Jake get through that bottleneck? How important is it to be able to, in your eyes, coach and train to your processes?
Well, when you do that, you're not leaving people to their own devices, for one. So people feel included, they feel bought in. So that's helpful, right? That's really important. Not only, and you got to look at this from a hierarchy standpoint. If you're a manager and you can't figure out what's going wrong, you're accountable to the owner, and the owner's going to be ticked off, right? If you're a salesperson and you can't you don't have the ability to figure out what's breaking down, you're accountable to the manager, and then you're constantly living under stress and fear that you're going to get fired. I mean, it's just a huge issue all along. And when you don't have the accountability and the visibility that tracking that stuff brings, you have huge problems. I sat down with a customer the other day, and we looked through his sections in JobNimbus that he'd been doing, and he was doing really good as far as getting people in the system. But the problem was there wasn't some culture change that needed to happen at the company, and so people were backing up into places. So we just took an overall look and said, okay, what do these numbers mean? You have X number of customers in this section, in this part of your process. Number one, what's your average roofing cost? Well, let's just call it $10,000. Okay, so if you have 20 people in there at $10,000 and they're not moving forward, or you've lost them, that's a revenue loss, right? So we look at those things, and we can do. I have my whole math thing set up in my brain so I can pitch it fast, right? If you have 3 sales guys, right, and each sales guy is losing 1 job per month, and your average roof cost is $15,000, and they're losing it through ignorance, right? They're not losing it because they were outsold. They're losing it because the paper got stuffed in between the seats of the truck or whatever, right? Or it got buried under a pile of files in their office and they forgot about it. That's $45,000 a month, right? And that's on the low end. Most people, when we go out and talk to them and we go on our road trips, you ask, would you disagree that your sales guys lose through ignorance 1 job a month? 3 guys, that's $45,000. That's over $500,000 a year in revenue, just lost. In fact, so once you make a change to systems and processes that you stick to, and you make little adjustments along the way, you're going to start to see your revenue increase by a lot. In fact, the guys that get it down right now are seeing about a 43% revenue increase per year. Imagine being able to come out and increase for 43%, and all you're doing is adding accountability, systems, processes, and a tech stack that helps you follow that stuff, right? That's huge. It's a huge, the ROI is crazy on it.
ROI is crazy, and it honestly can be, getting the systems and processes in place takes some effort, but like you said, they're repeatable, and so once you have them in place, it just happens. It works. It's a machine. It runs. Let's take a quick break, Jake, and then when we come back, I want to talk about, I think with the whole COVID-19, that's had to force people to look at their systems and processes and maybe adapt and change some of those. I want to talk about that from a higher level. I think that there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of that. And so let's take a quick break, and then we come back, we'll talk.
Let's talk about it.
What's up, guys? Michael here. Season 3, Talk About It. We're pumped. We got 10 awesome guests. We're going to deliver top 10 pieces of advice for contracting companies. We've got the new taco counter sponsored by Peyton MMA. We're going to do 30 from MMA, 30 from Company Camp, $60 per taco that I eat this season. It's going to be an awesome season. You guys aren't going to want to miss it. It's
Taco season.
taco season.
Let's talk about it.
What's up, everyone? We're back. Jake Dempsey, JobNimbus. We're talking systems, and I love to add the word in there, repeatable processes. And I mentioned before we went to break that I wanted to talk COVID-19 and how that's kind of thrown a wrench into a lot of people's systems and processes. Just from contractors you've been talking to, Jake, how have you seen them, the successful ones, adapt their systems and processes during this time?
It's been interesting to watch this because, and this is something else I like to share. I'm the company evangelist, right? So as an evangelist, I'm supposed to insert some sort of spiritual input. Noah didn't build the ark after it started raining, right? And so the contractors that had systems and processes in place had much lower impact on their business than the ones that were scrambling to figure something out, or those that were just kind of floating there and meandering along and weren't invested into their systems and processes. I've seen people, and it's holistic, right? I mean, you can have a system and process, a system and process for a certain section of your business, right? Mm-hmm. Every time something comes through, do this. Every time this, and they just do that over and over again. But if it's not holistic, you're missing out on other parts of the business that it can affect, right? So maybe your systems and processes don't come in until your production or your billing, or they're only for your sales and they're not for your production and billing, right? Then all of a sudden, when it hits the fan, you're scrambling to try and grab stuff. Well, the ones that are being really successful already have it figured out, right? There's no difference. JobNimbus is cloud-based, right? So the difference is actually that, hey, stay at home, get on your computer, log into your JobNimbus, do the same thing we were doing before, only add maybe Zoom meetings. Let's tweak some of the processes of talking to people, but nothing's changed. And what a lot of people actually found out is that if you can work at home, if you're disciplined enough to work from your home, you actually get more done, right? Nobody's driving off for an hour and a half to eat lunch and hang out with everybody else. Nobody's walking into your office talking about the ball game, or in my case, the UFC fights the weekend before. I mean, there's just not that banter, which is good and bad, right? It makes you more productive, but then if you're not careful with that, it can make people feel, like, hey, I'm out here alone, and somebody please throw me a life preserver. The ones that are successful are figuring out all of the pieces. And I think it's important, while we're talking about JobNimbus, the best software out there, that not all of your ills will be solved through just, okay, let's jump on a software and now everything's fixed, right? Part of this is cultural. Part of this is, do you have nepotism in your office and you've hired your cousin's son who's dropped out of college and you're just kind of throwing him some money to because he's family, right? It's time to let him go. Those are some decisions that you have to make along the way to go, listen, what you're doing at home is unacceptable if you're not putting notes in the system. This is our process. We call the customer, and then we immediately put notes in the system. If there are no notes in the system, there's going to be some consequence for that. That's cultural. I can't fix that on a software level. That's not something I have the ability to, can't push an enter button and tase somebody and remind them to put that stuff. So the guys that are doing it have a process in place. It doesn't change it. The only thing changes the location of where it's coming from. The changes they've made are things like they're grabbing Eagle View, for instance. And because they don't have the ability to stand on a roof or knock a door all the time, they're going, let me walk out there or go interact with this customer with a quick squares from Eagle View. That way I have a picture of the house. I can talk to him about the roof. I know ballpark what the squares are on the roof and what the pitch is. And if they want a price, I can give it to them right there. And I've got guys that are closing like no other. Of course, the storms have come. And then I've seen guys that just kind of like, man, our business is shut down and nobody's calling and everybody's terrified. And these are guys that they don't have a box to begin with, so they struggle to think outside of that, right?
Yep.
So if you just have this thing that's in your brain and your process is your process and you're the only one that knows it, how do you share that? How do you move that out to everybody else in the company, except to say, hey, normally we do A, B, and C, but this time we're gonna put an A.5, and we're gonna make this quick adjustment. We're gonna do a test. We're gonna see how it works. If anybody else, varying results, let us know, and we'll adjust from there and keep cranking. Those are the guys that are winning.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit on a lot of really important things there. I would say from my perspective, 90 plus, probably closer to 100% of contractors that I've talked to have gotten something out of COVID-19 that they say, man, we are so much more efficient now because we're doing this piece of the process this way. And it was a forced change in this case, but they've made that change, and we're never going back to the way we did it before. Even, once COVID-19 hopefully passes and everything, we're still going to do it this way. And I'm sure you've had the same experience with a lot of your contractors that you've talked to. How important so hearing that, my thought is, well, should it have taken a pandemic for you to make this change? How important is it for, even if you think you have the best processes in place, how important is it that you review those processes and always strive to improve them?
This is hard because contractors, listen, we're a rough bunch. We have egos. We all are good at our trade. We it's just the nature of the beast of who's doing it. We're rough and tumble guys. There's a little bit of ego involved. This is a hard thing, but it's essential. You really have to take a look. If you don't know how to look at your numbers, you should find somebody to help you. You have the Danny Kerrs and the Jim Johnsons of the world that understand how to coach your company. If good enough is good enough, far be it from me to stand in your way of being where you are. If you have no plans except to just drudge away every day at work, and just keep bringing those checks in, great. But what's your 5-year plan? What's your out? What's your golden parachute to get out of this thing, right? If you're not looking long term, I will tell you, here's what's going to happen. Because I did this myself as a contractor. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I didn't have anything documented. I had nothing to offer anybody, and I put the word out, hey, I'm selling my company. And I had one guy that's like, I'll give you $3,000 for it. What are you talking about, $3,000? Do you understand what I've got invested in this company? He's like, okay, so who are your customers? I don't know. What are your opportunities? Who are your partners? Who's feeding you leads? I don't have that information for you, but what I've built is this legacy that's amazing. Somebody will call you on the phone and give you a job overnight, and so I'm at least worth $50,000, right? Nothing, right? If you have a turnkey process and system and go, listen, I'm done because I'm tired and I'm old and I want to go to Hawaii and live out the rest of my days, or hey, I'm super successful and there's no reason for me to sit and babysit this company. So I'm going to bring on a partner. Whatever those things are, if you don't have a system and a process, it's really hard. In fact, I think you've actually got him coming up. Matt is on your docket to interview. I was talking to him and he said, I went into Nashville and I was looking for somebody to work for because I wanted to change. I've got all this experience. He says, I was courted by several businesses. One roofer looked really good, but he had no CRM. He had no processes. He didn't use he had no tech stack. And so I walked away from the job because that's my expectation now, that I can walk into something and just be able to start producing. I don't have to try and reinvent the wheel myself. I just want to go. I want to do what I know how to do, and I want a way to document it. If you want a turnkey business, you can hand somebody and say, listen, this thing makes $3 million a year. You're going to pay me handsomely for it. and all these guys stay. Here's the processes. There's tons of value in that.
Yeah.
When things get hard and you're wondering, well, what do I do? Look at the system and the process you have in place and figure out what has to happen next. If you're running out of leads, cool. Fire up Facebook, figure that out. Look to Joseph in the industry and see what he can do to point you towards some marketing. I mean, there's so many partners and so much intelligence out there. Put away your own ego and utilize it. I mean, COVID-19 is a way. If your company is still thriving during COVID-19 and you scrap everything you've done in the last month and a half and go back to what you're doing, you're a moron. You're crazy. You adopt the things that are working. That's the whole point of systems and processes. So look, maybe you hire somebody part-time because this whole remote thing's working for you and you're killing it in sales remotely. And now your question is, when somebody calls in, how would you like us to interact with you? Are you okay with somebody coming to your house, or would you rather talk to somebody via Zoom or something like that? I'd rather talk to somebody via Zoom. Cool. And now I know who I'm going to assign that one to, but it goes over there. There's no reason to take somebody that's a killer door knocker out of his process. Go knock doors. Go slay it. So it would be a real shame for people to lose that whole process along the way.
Yeah, no, there's so many great pieces in that answer there. I think the biggest one that I would say is, I don't care if you're in day one, year one of your company, or you're saying, I'm about ready to get out of this thing. And no matter what your systems and processes are like, continually adding and improving and analyzing those is so important. Because like you said, when it comes time to exit, the more systems and processes, the more turnkey my business is, the more valuable it is. It's worthless if there's no systems and processes. And I love that point. And I think that that's so important for everyone else to hear. So Jake, huge thanks for you joining us today. Tons of good information. Guys, Jake loves systems and processes. If you want to learn more about systems and processes, hit Jake up. He will talk for days on that. But Jake, as always, appreciate you joining us. Great information. And we will see you guys next week to wrap up Talk About It. So thanks, Jake, and we'll see everyone here in the coming weeks.
Let's talk about it.